This is the ghost story of the Croak Patterson Mansion. This big house was built in 1893, and it has a weird history right off the bat. Well, not weird history, but the city has had four different addresses in its year. The city lists its construction date off by 43 years, and it's listed as a two-story, 2,800 square foot house. That's off by a lot. Well, this was built in 1893 by Thomas Croak, who was a carpet magnate. But he only lived there for 6 months. He already felt something was off about this place. He traded it to a lawyer and politician named James Patterson for some land that Patterson owned. Well, Patterson moves in with his wife, who was pregnant. Her name was Catherine, and they already had a couple kids. And while they're there, shortly afterwards, Catherine gives birth to a girl. Unfortunately, the girl dies 2 weeks later. Now, the baby was buried over in Cheeseman Park. But about a week after the baby was buried, they get a knock on the door. It's the caretaker over at the cemetery. He says that somebody had dug up the baby's grave, stolen the body. Well, after some exhaustive searching, it didn't take too long. It turns out the baby had been dug up by Catherine, who was so upset at her baby's death she couldn't stand to be separated from her. So she dug her up. She reburied the baby in the basement. Well, Catherine, unfortunately, dies a few years after that. And Patterson wanted to get out of the house, so he left it to his another daughter named Maud, who built the Waring Mansion. Now, psychics say that the mansion is weeping. It's imbued with evil. It's had a new owner every few years. Let's fast forward to 1950. A doctor named Archie Sedan moved in with his wife, Tulene. And Sedan was very important in his field. And so not only did he work as a doctor, but he also did a lot of conferences. So he traveled a lot. He was all over the country lecturing a lot. And meanwhile, they had moved here from another part of this, from southwest corner of the state. So she's here. She's got no family. She's got no friends. She's extremely depressed. She goes up in a bathroom on the second floor, or on the third floor, rather, and she fills the wash basin with water, adds rat poison, which creates cyanide gas, and she kills herself. Well, in 1973, the house was about to be torn down. A lot of mansions were torn down in those days, and this seemed like a big unruly one. But a realtor named Mary Ray said, "You can't tear that house down." She bought it for only $50,000. Pretty good deal, it seemed. And she decides to turn it into an apartment building. But with the construction being done to do that, well, every day it seems the work was being undone overnight. When it finally gets completed, there's a couple things. The renters complain that there's a couple with a baby. The baby's always crying. But there's no couples with babies in the building. Renters also see a woman in white on the third floor, but there's nobody like that in the building at all. And now, this one's crazy. There was a couple, the apartment right, you can see the window just to the right of the front door on the first floor. They call Mary up. They are hysterical. She comes rushing over. They tell her something's wrong with the house. She's hysterical. They're hysterical. She comes rushing over, opens the door. The house looks like it's been hit by a hurricane. Everything's off the walls, strewn all over the room. The sofa had been moved all the way across the room, and there was a 200-pound fireplace grate that was embedded in the wall across the room. She's like, "Oh my God, what happened? Did you get hurt? Who robbed the place?" They go, "Nobody. We were just sitting on the sofa watching TV, and all this happened." Well, we had another new owner a few years later, and he decides to turn it into an office building. And while construction's going on, he hires a night watchman to look after it, to make sure stuff isn't stolen. And well, the first one lasts 1 week. Second one quits after 1 day because they both say, "This house is creepy. I ain't going back in there." Well, so he hires instead. He decides to hire guard dogs to watch the house. And so the guy with the dogs, he brings them over and he basically lets the dogs in, early at night, and they roam the building, and then he used to pick them up in the morning. Well, when he comes back in the next day, he calls for the dogs, usually very obedient dogs who respond to his voice, but they can't be found. So they start searching the building for the dogs. And they get up to the third floor. They feel a wind blowing down the hall. They go down to that seat on the right side of the building there. There's kind of a turret. Well, they walk into that room, and there's a broken window in the room. They look down, and there's a broken window in the room, but no glass in the room. The glass has gone out. They look down below. They see the two dogs. They had jumped out the window to escape whatever it was that was creeping them out in this building. So this guy decides if he's going to turn this into an office building, he needs to find out what's creepy in here. He hires an exorcist. The exorcist comes in and starts doing his exorcist thing. And the plaster around, there's a mirror right inside the foyer when you walk in the door. The plaster around it cracks, and out comes this black fog, which settles on the floor around the feet of everybody. And later on, one of the workers brought his wife came over to bring him lunch, brought their dog along. When the dog got near that dog got near the house, the dog collapsed and he peed on itself. Let's go to 1999. A veterinarian moves in here. His wife is pregnant, and she can't get out of bed. Well, she's in an apartment up on the third floor. She said a woman in white comes in, doesn't speak to her, but in her head she can hear, "My name is Catherine. I'm here to help you." The woman then helps her up. The woman in white helps the pregnant wife up so she can get out of bed. But then she disappears as she leaves the room. Well, that woman gave birth to triplets, 3 boys, and they were here for a while. And but the boys refused to. They were down in the basement one day. They were playing. And they came up and they said, "Mommy, can we play somewhere else?" And now they had spent a lot of money to turn this house or the basement into a nice playroom for the kids. They're like, "What's wrong? We turned that into a beautiful room for you kids to play." And they said, "Yeah, but the tall man in the corner in the tuxedo was creeping us out." They said in the corner of the house, basement, they had seen a tall man in a tuxedo wearing spats, like an early 20th century tuxedo. And the man had half a beard. Well, several TV shows have shot in this house, those ghost hunter shows. And some of them, they use actors to portray other stuff that has happened. And actors, I don't know if you know actors, I do. When they're sitting around, they will get up to all kinds of stuff and amuse each other. And apparently they know they're shooting this thing. And one of the actors decides to have some fun. And he says in his deep actor voice, "Spirits of the mansion, I command you to make your presence known." He says it, repeats it a couple of times. "Spirits of the mansion, I command you to make your presence known." Well, they start to hear a boom in the basement. He goes, everybody else a little freaked out. he's going to keep going. He doubles down. He goes, "Come on, you cowardly spirits." And then they hear more booms going along the basement. And one of the actors, a woman, is they're down in the foyer to the stairs down to the basement. And one of the women, she's right there where she can see the door, and she sees coming up the stairs that black fog that I told you about earlier. And then out of the fog, a shape of a human head forms and rotates 360 degrees. So another show is in here with a psychic. The psychic comes in, just senses right away that this house is angry. She's walking up to the second floor, and that black fog comes after her, chases her up to the second floor. Next thing she remembers, she is standing outside of the house in a snowbank. And for the following week after that, she had several dogs. None of them would come near her. There's another private tour. One of our tours, actually, was here. And they had a psychic on the tour. It was a private ghost tour. And that psychic said that she could see an 8-year-old girl in a long dress outside the carriage house. And also, leaving, she saw a demon on the top step, a tall man in a tuxedo, spats, and half a beard. Well, some other psychics had visited these places. There's a woman in Boulder called Krista Sokash. She runs Boulder Psychic Horizons, and she and a friend of hers, Ann Leggett, came here. And they walked in, they said, that mirror, the one that cracked, the wall cracked around, was the heart of the mansion. On the second floor, they sensed that something had happened there. In the third floor, they felt the room was really cold and frigid. And when they left the house, they're standing outside talking. An icicle crashes down from the roof and nearly kills them. They also said that in the basement, they saw 2 imps and a tall man with a tuxedo, spats, and half a beard. Also, Krista Sokash says that this building knows us at Banjo Billy's, and it doesn't like us. So let's get the heck out of here, huh?